Jason Light.
I'll give it to Jason Light.
64% Julian Breezeball. 29% Jason Light. 6% Eric.
The fuck picked that? Eric Neander.
In a weird way, when you think about it.
I understand what you're going to say. I get it. You're not wrong. But I don't know if anybody, like right off rip, you're not thinking Rays. You know what I'm saying? Very few people are thinking Rays. Very few.
That's the thing.
Very few people know about what the Rays are doing.
Well, in the Tampa area, you would. The fact that he's able to do what he does without resources, pretty wild. And Jason Light, what he did for Brady, right? Back like hook crack?
Hook crack. Hook crack.
But now? Change the.
Crack.
So,
That's much.
we're ready to roll.
Roll it.
So we were just speaking about teams where you're going into the season and you're thinking like, all right, I don't know how good we're going to be. What is that like when you're a team, when you're going into the season? Because there is that, hey, it's a new season, we're excited, everybody's 0-0, blah 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 blah. But what was that like for you? Because obviously, not to bring up bad stuff, but you didn't make the playoffs in your career.
Correct.
Was there any season that was different than the others where you went into the season thinking this year's going to be different when you were with the Bucks?
No.
Every year was the same?
Yeah.
You didn't think one time that you were going to make the playoffs?
This is why.
What was the biggest thing that gave that away?
It was pretty easy for me. None of the coaches ever said it. I never had a coach stand up in front of the team and go, this is the year we make the playoffs. Never. Once again, I always tell you the coaches know.
Right.
They're not going to say that, bro. Tony Dungy walked into the locker room and knew he had work to do. He knew it. And I'm almost positive the next year that was a narrative.
Right.
But it wasn't a narrative his first year. Sam Weich came up. We were 3-13. Sam Weich came in there, said a couple cool things. But he never said.
What? Like, what did he say?
He said something like, I remember being in the locker room. I remember Sam Weich saying some things and going, look at Tony and going, like what he said.
Like what?
Just the things that are going to make us good teams.
Okay.
Like some of the things made sense. There's some people that, Sam Weich said some things and said he was going to do some things, and it started off good, and then afterwards it started to waver. Okay? And as a football player, as an athlete, as a man, I really don't care if you're nice. I just want you to be honest with me.
Right.
I don't care. Tony Dungy won't care if you like what he says. But he's going to tell you what it is and the way it is. And if you ask him, he's going to tell you the way it is. That's me. That's what I need. Ray Rhodes, in a different way, is going to tell you the way it is. But Sam Weich was kind of sometime-ish, and I wasn't a big fan of that. But until I got to Philadelphia. When I got to Philadelphia, I believe they made the playoffs the year before. And we started off okay. We were real good offensively. We couldn't stop anybody. John Gruden was our offensive coordinator. We had aspirations of making the playoffs. And then we lost a Monday Night Football game in Dallas, and that game still haunts me.
What about the approach? You mentioned Ray Rhodes. What about the approach with the Eagles?
Well, it was
different.
It's a feel, okay? I think when you go to camp, you either, and as a young football player, I'm just trying to hold on, to be honest with you.
You're just trying to maintain your spot, right?
At no time did I go into training camp thinking, man, if we don't make the playoffs this year, that is not my mindset. My mindset is I need to keep my job, and I need to keep fighting and do whatever I can to keep my job. That's my mindset. If you're in New England after you win a couple Super Bowls, then maybe they're going, okay, we're going to win, but that is not my mindset. I'm just really trying to play well myself and not try to be kicked out of the league, because that's the worst thing.
Right.
I don't want the Buccaneers to succeed without me. So that was never the mentality. Now, Tristan Wirfs came in as a rookie and won a Super Bowl his rookie year. I promise you, Tristan Wirfs' mentality is different than mine every single year.
Right.
He probably comes in going, well, if we don't make the playoffs, we suck. Back in the day, in the early '90s, the Bucks go 5-11. They're having parades because everybody thinks we're on the right path. So the mentality of the people in the locker room have definitely changed. And listen, in that locker room, there's a bunch of guys that have made the playoffs for quite a few years now, and they're getting used to making the playoffs, regardless what the record is. Those guys expect to make the playoffs, and I think that's important.
And I wonder, too, like if you're the Rays going into this season, when there's a lot of unsureties, right?
Yep.
And you don't really know what the future holds. Is it a bad thing to talk about playoffs? Is it a terrible thing to set those expectations so high, or is that just comes with it depends on your leadership, how they roll? Because I feel like sometimes you don't have to say it when you know that's what it's an unspoken.
Correct.
Like the Bucks aren't going into the season. They don't necessarily have to talk about the playoffs, and we know that's the first step, win the division. But I think if there's teams that, let's say you're coming off a year like the Rays had last year where they won 80 games, do you, as a leader, put that in your players' minds to like, hey, we can be a playoff team, we can compete, don't worry about all the off-the-field stuff?
I have no problem with it as long as it's authentic.
Yes.
And that's the hard part because great athletes know what it looks like and they know how many of their compadres are at that level. So they're not going to put their neck out there. They're not going to do it. If like greatness, like Wayne Gretzky, if Wayne Gretzky says, and we're good enough to make to the Stanley Cup, I'm going to believe him, okay? He knows what it looks like. There's a lot of people, like somebody said the other day, was talking about a quarterback, and I was thinking, well, what does he know about what it looks like?
Right.
He's never seen what it looks like. And I always go back to Bill Parcells. When that year I was in the Jets, he goes, Ian, we're good at every position. And we're mature at every position, and we have a great chance of going to the Super Bowl. And the way he looked at it and said it, he unequivocally believed that. And if you look at the roster, and I can tell you who the roster was, they had a bunch of veteran players you knew were going to be out there fighting on Sundays, and that's the way Bill Parcells, constructed his team. That was 1999. Yeah, it'll be 1999. I mean, they had Kevin Mawai, they had Jumbo Elliott, they had Jason Fabini, they had Keyshawn Johnson and Wayne Corbett and Curtis Martin and Brian Cox.
Freddie Baxter.
They had Aaron Glenn and Steve Atwater.
Was that the year that Vinny got hurt?
Yeah.
Oh,
first game of the season, tore his Achilles, or they would have went to the Super Bowl. Look at that roster, bro.
So your quarterbacks ended up being Ray Lucas and Rick
went to the playoffs with Ray Lucas, by the way.
But they have Richie Anderson, fullback, Curtis Martin, Gerald Soule, Corbett, Quinn Early, Keyshawn Johnson, Freddie Baxter, Jumbo, Kerry Jenkins, Kevin Mawai, Randy Thomas. They had Jason Ferguson, who was a good nose tackle.
Yes, he was. Tony Mayberry says Jason Ferguson is one of the best players he played against.
Anthony Pleasant, linebackers, James Ferrier, Marvin Jones, Mo Lewis, Roman Pfeiffer.
Brian Cox.
Yeah. Because I'm looking at the injured reserve. Yeah. Brian Cox, Jason Fabini. Yeah, Leon Johnson, who was an incredible returner. Vinny Testaverde.
Yeah, dude.
Your D-backs are Atwater, Marcus Coleman.
Steve Atwater.
You know who else was on that team? Scott Frost.
Oh, yeah. Me and Frosty were cool, dog.
Scott Frost. Ray Mickens, cool. Omar Stoutmeyer. Yeah. You had Tom Tupa as the punter. Wow, man. Scott Frost
one day in meetings, Bill Parcells goes, Coach, who's number 47? It was a Scott Frost, coach. And this is in meetings. He says, you tell Scott Frost that the next time we put this film on, if he doesn't look like he's trying to run through a brick wall, tell him not to show up to the meetings. He's telling this to the coach.
Who said that?
Parcells.
Oh,
Because I'm telling you, Bill Parcells has a different way of inspiring you, but he's going to inspire you. He said, you tell Scott Frost, and Scott Frost is right there. You tell Scott Frost the next time we put this film on, if it doesn't look like he's going to run to a brick wall, don't come to film, because he was pussyfooting. He goes, Coach, isn't he here for special teams? Yes, Coach. Does he look like he's doing special teams? No. Well, you tell him. And I was just like, this guy's a tyrant. But he got people to play, dog. He got people to play.
Yeah.
And Bill Parcells was the best I've ever seen at this. When my ego was high, brought it down. And when it was low, he brought it up. Like he could see I was low in camp one time, and he looks at me and goes, I know you can play. He goes, if something happens with Randy Thomas, he goes, I know you can play because you're a good football player. So thank you. Another time I'm walking around, he goes, Too bad you're so out of shape and fat. so he don't want you to be. Yeah. He don't want you to be too high and too low. You know. So
they didn't make the playoffs that year. They were 8-8 though. But check this out.
Yeah.
They were 1-6 at the bye.
Right.
The only game they won was actually in Denver against the Broncos, and then after the bye they were 7-2. That's good coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right there, you're like, oh, let's adjust, man. And then you went to New England, to Dallas, to Miami.
That was when Dallas was different. In the 90s, Dallas was different.
And the Jets beat them.
Yeah, they did.
I remember that game.
Yeah, they did.
Well, they were 10-6. Oh, that's so crazy.
The good old days.
Dan Gailey. And you look at these teams, and with baseball right around the corner, you wonder, it's a little different. I feel like baseball than some of these other sports. Well, you kind of know the Dodgers, but like they don't win it every year. A couple years ago, it was Arizona, the third best team in the division.
They may win 5 of the next 10. Dodgers, they might.
Maybe.
I wouldn't be shocked.
But I feel like it's a little bit of a different story in other sports where you look at football, like, was it really a surprise? Like midway through the season, if I would have said Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl, that wouldn't have shocked you.
No, why would it?
Before the season, it might not have shocked you.
Nope.
And they were there 2 years before.
Nope.
So baseball's a little different than that aspect, where you run into a hot pitcher, your bats go cold. Football, you have to fire on all cylinders. You have to work together so much. It's just one game, man. You have to get it right that one day. So you would think maybe it'd be the opposite, right? That you would be like, all right, all you have to do is beat the Chiefs once.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, football, I think it's been pretty chalk the last couple of years because of how good the teams have been. Outside of like, all right, the Bengals, but it's the Chiefs and the Niners a couple times. Both those teams have phenomenal rosters.
Sure. I think it's equal. I'll be honest with you. I think it's equal. Like at the beginning of the year, for a no-name team to get to the playoffs, like give me a team in the playoffs. Say the Cardinals make the playoffs, okay? In football, the Cardinals make the playoffs next year. If the Cardinals won the Super Bowl, you'd be shocked, okay? Right. Just to make the playoffs is one thing, but to get to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl is completely the same. But it's still hard just to get to the playoffs. Right. I think it's the same in baseball. I think you could overachieve, but to get to the playoffs is crazy. It's hard still because it's so much. Like, if you have any liabilities, it's so many games. Like, if you have one bad pitcher, that son of a bitch got to hit the mound every 5-6 days. And in football, if you have a bad corner, he's got to get out there every game, and they know he's bad. So sports, and I say this to people that look at me funny, and I think you'll understand, sports is one thing you can't fake at all. There's no faking in football. There's no faking in baseball. There's no faking in basketball. There's no faking in professional sports because you got to go through a whole lot of dress rehearsals before you get there. But when you get to that level, to overachieve and for somebody to come out of the blue, when was the last time somebody came out of the blue and won a championship in any sport? I mean, it's hard to do, bro. It really is.
Texas Rangers won a couple of years ago. I think they picked them to come in third or fourth in the AL West. But outside of that,
I wouldn't even say it's out of the blue. Like, you know what I mean? They weren't bad. They weren't bad.
Yeah, they still had a lot of good players.
If you said any team to come out of the blue next year in the Super Bowl, and I guarantee I can sweep them out that they're not winning. They're not winning.
I mean, I think you could look at it now and find out, like,
half the teams you're not winning. Half.
It's more,
maybe more. might be. I can tell you what. I can tell you 3 teams are not going to win a Super Bowl in the South.
We'll go through them.
Yep.
Surprise or not surprise if it's a Super Bowl. We'll just go not surprises. I think not surprises will be under. I think it'll be around 10 or less. Bills, not surprise.
No.
Dolphins, yes.
Surprise.
Patriots, Jets, yes.
Surprise.
Ravens,
not surprise.
Not surprise. Bengals,
yeah, still surprised
because they just Browns.
Yeah, still surprised. Please, no.
Steelers,
no. They're not going to be. They're not going to be in it. No way.
Okay, so now, just all right. Texans.
You're not going to get more than 10 teams. No way.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's not half. It's less than that.
Texans not impossible. It's not impossible.
Okay, we'll put them on the.
It's impossible. It's
like,
impossible. Yeah. It's impossible.
Colts, Jags, Titans.
No.
None of them.
No.
Broncos.
Wouldn't scratch them off.
Okay. Broncos.
I wouldn't scratch them off.
Chiefs. Raiders, Chargers.
No.
Cowboys. No. Giants.
I don't know if I scratch the Raiders. I don't know the Chargers off. The Chargers might be. I mean, that's a team that might. I like
6.
I like their coaching.
6. Possible. Cowboys, Giants.
No, sir.
Eagles. Yes.
Yes.
Commanders.
Yeah.
Okay. Put Commanders. Bears.
No.
Lions, yes.
Yes.
Packers and Vikings.
I would have to put Packers on there.
Vikings?
I don't think I'd put them on now.
Let's go 10 for the Falcons, Panthers, Saints.
No.
Bucks.
Yes.
All right, that's 11. Cardinals, Rams, Niners, Seahawks. Any of those teams? Let's say Rams and Niners.
I would put 2 out of those 4.
Okay, so 13 teams out of the 32.
Yeah.
Right?
And the odds are the ones we just picked, like the 49ers, are not winning. Not good enough anymore.
That's what I'm saying. There's probably 8 to 10 teams that have a chance to win
the Super Bowl. You could pick 10 teams, and it'll be one of those 10 teams that are going to win the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Period.
I would take them 10.
You can do that in every sport, though.
Yeah, probably.
You can probably do it in every sport. For sure.
Except hockey. Hockey's one of those.
Hockey's odd. Hockey's
the odd one.
Hockey's not just X's and O's.
Nah.
It's way more than that. Your goalie may have a bad year, or you may have a goalie has a stupid year. Goalies have done it by themselves, just about.
It's crazy.
That's real. That's real.
It's the one sport where you literally can get impacted by one player. You could have a great quarterback, but
Barry Bonds can't do it by himself.
No, of course
they go pitch him.
Yeah.
They were showing some highlights of Barry Bonds, and they were telling stories about Barry Bonds. And I know people is way hot removed and stuff like that. I remember the Barry Bonds era. If you watched it, I don't think there's a close second as far as a hitter. How dangerous he was as a hitter.
Well, and Chipper Jones, I just saw a video with Chipper Jones, and he was like, one weekend we pitched to him, I think, 4 times out of 13. 4 dingers. And he had like 4 home runs.
All in the ocean.
No, he had 4 hits, 2 walk-offs, and 9 walks. He got on base 13 times and only got pitched to 4 times.
No, he said he didn't get pitched. He said he had 4 pitches to hit.
Yes, 4 pitches.
He hit 4 pitches, and he hit them all. He hit them all in Montgomery's Cove.
It's amazing.
Yikes!
Unbelievable.
It's a bad man.
One thing I wanted to get to before we wrap up today is, Stephen A. Smith has been all over the news.
The great Stephen A. Smith.
LeBron James was just on Pat McAfee talking that talk now. But one thing that really stood out to me was he had a chat with, and this is what I like about Stephen A., whether he's your cup of tea or not. Like, he's had all these different people on his podcast. Mm-hmm. He's gone on different podcasts. Mm-hmm. Like, he looks at people on the different side of the aisle and has these conversations, which I think is so healthy in this world, to have people with different viewpoints being able to get there.
It's necessary.
It's so necessary.
It is.
And then him and RG3 were going at it. And then he went on RG3's podcast, what I thought was really cool. Because years ago, about 13 years ago, RG3, remember Rob Parker? Rob Parker said he was a cornball brother. He's not really like the rest of us. And that kind of thing is followed Robert Griffin III his whole career. He is married to a white woman, and he brought Stephen A. on the show and just kind of said flat out, man, like, you were just, every time people bring things up and they don't agree with what I say, it always goes back to that. Yeah. Even though I was, offensive rookie of the year, I was a top number 2 overall draft pick, like, it always gets personal. And he brought up the fact that, why do we have to continue going down the road of bringing personal things into discussions about sports? Why do we consistently have to bring politics into things about sports? Now, he also articulated that it's natural. It's going to happen. There's going to be things that, whatever have, whether it was the Colin Kaepernick thing or whether it's the George Floyd thing and how the leagues responded. And I understand that. But for somebody I wasn't always a big RG3 fan, I really like what he had to say about this. Mm-hmm. Because for too many times, and this goes back to the Stephen A. LeBron discussion, of like, it's one thing to say you don't think Bronny is good, but it's another thing when you say, as a father, I'm pleading with you, don't do this. And I think that's where, when you have so much stock in these sports voices, I'm not saying players, but people that talk about sports for a living, they're habitual line steppers, and they almost start attacking people's character rather than keeping it on the field. So I guess the question is does there need to be almost like a redefinition of where the line is, and a reiteration of like, let's talk about sports here rather than just talking smack about somebody because of whether it's their politics or whether it's their beliefs or who they are as a human being, because that's really what it has become. Like, that's what sports talk. That's why people don't watch as much as they once did, because I don't want to turn on the radio or TV or hear shit like that. I just don't. Like, I want to hear about the games. I want to hear about storylines that are pertaining to the athletes and the games. But if you start going down and you start talking about RG3 as a human being and as a person because you think because he's married to a white woman he's a Republican, like, I don't care about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you on most of the things you said, and I think when you look at ESPN, and I'm not a big fan anymore. I might see clips on Instagram or whatever, but I think it's become more about the broadcasters. Okay, it's more about look how crazy I am. Look how ballistic I will be when I'm watching Stephen A. Smith and Mad Dog Russo, whatever. I watch it for 2 minutes and I go ugh, and I just turn it. It's just two blowhards yelling, and it's just I don't want that. I want education. I want educated people talk. And I think Stephen A. Smith. I don't know if I usually agree with Stephen A. Smith. I'm being serious about that. And you know me, Jay. I try to keep it as level as I can. As far as I've been on this microphone for a long time, and I'm just going to tell everybody. I try to never make it personal. There's certain people, Gerald McCoy. I've never met Gerald McCoy. I've talked to very many people, including yourself, Jay, that say he's a great guy. Yeah. You know what? I've conceded the fact that he's a great guy. I've only talked about his play. I'll talk about his leadership, but I think I have every right because I like a certain type of leader, and I'm pretty consistent with that. Okay, I think Gerald McCoy, for me, comes in the Russell Wilson leadership thing where don't tell me what you are, just be you.
Show me.
Just show me. You know what I'm saying? So I try not to make it ever personal, okay? Once you get personal with it, and I think with the Bronny thing, once you said the father thing, and as a father, to hear somebody eviscerating my NBA son would bother me. Okay,
but is it about him being his son, or he's taking shots at your character as a father?
Sure,
more than an NBA player.
Well, just think of this: would your parents, okay, love your parents to death. If somebody was coming at you,
yeah, of course,
just because. Think about LeBron. Mm-hmm. LeBron's sitting there thinking, little bitty, and Stephen Smith's not that small. He's not that small, but he's saying, hairline that in the middle of his head. Stephen A. Smith is talking about my NBA son. Like he's a piece of crap. By the way, he scored 39 the other day. But and to me, listen, to me, this is it, okay? And it happens like this in every sport. If you're a Tim Tebow fan, if he plays poorly, the naysayers go, told you. And as soon as he plays well, the people love him go, told you. So that's all that happens in sports. Let's let it happen. Let's let it unfold. We don't know if Bronny's going to be a great basketball player when it's all said and done. Right now, he's in the lower league. You score 39 points, and I tell you what it does say, you deserve to be in the league. There's very few people who can score 39 points in any league. But does it mean that he should have been drafted where he was? No. But the world doesn't work that way. And to me, when people start to get personal, and for saying that about RG3, about having a white wife and stuff like that, once you go there, I'm out.
But people don't even have to go there because you know how it is. When we get to things like that, when it comes to politics and sports, when it comes to race, in conversations, Ian, listen.
Is that politics or hate? I
think
it's more hate.
I'm just saying politics, race, hate. When you have conversations with people, when you watch people have conversations with people, you don't necessarily need to hear somebody say the N-word to know that they're racist.
That's a fact.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a fact.
So there's a lot of times where you don't need to necessarily hear the entire thing black and white without, you don't need to know the whole story.
Yeah.
Somebody doesn't have to blatantly say how they are,
right,
but their words and their actions define who they are, right? So when you have situations like this, and again, I didn't like RG3. I just don't like his delivery. Sometimes it's not personal. I don't care.
It's not personal.
No, it's not my cup of tea. But I've also grown to really respect what he's been doing the last couple of weeks, and I've started leaning more hey, I want to hear more what he's got to say, because I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make when we get into life in general is we go, that person's this, that person's this. I'm closing my mind forever, right? And I'm not talking about the extreme, like if somebody's an awful person, and I get that. But for that instance in particular, hate RG3.
No.
But I didn't necessarily I just don't like his delivery. I don't like him as a commentator. But if he does other things that I like, I think it's important to keep your mind open, right? And just maybe go down that road of like, hey, maybe I'll listen to his podcast a little bit more because I like the angle that he's taking.
But isn't it like that with every single reporter?
It should be,
no,
but it's not
though.
like that.
No, but it is, though. I think the people, when you watch somebody, you watch them because you like them.
Yeah, maybe.
No, because look.
Well, no, I wouldn't say like them. I would say because they invoke an emotion out of you.
Okay.
Because
I think that's the same thing.
People,
it's pretty close. When you walk into a room, you can tell if people like you or not.
Oh, that's
so
true.
You're changing the channels. And I'm changing channels.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
You think people? Not everybody that tuned in to Steve Dumig growing up likes Steve Dumig. They like to hate him, or they like to be mad.
Yeah,
right.
There's got to be a reason.
But then there's people that you don't like. Like I don't know if I'll ever be a Ryan Clark fan, and I've been consistent with you since day
that's
one.
a weird one.
I don't.
That's fine, but that's fine.
I don't like the angles that he takes. I don't like the arguments that he makes.
You know who's that guy for me?
Who's that?
I cannot stand Jason Whitlock.
Yeah.
Like when he opens his mouth, everything Jason Whitlock says angers me. Everything.
But he is the reason. I can't.
Everything.
He's a contrarian, though. He's a contrarian. He wants to go against the popular.
He's opposite of whatever I am.
Yeah. Well, you're very easygoing. You know what I mean? Kind of do your thing.
Yeah.
Jason Whitlock wants to point out every single inaccuracy out there. And listen, there are times that he comes up with some stuff, and I appreciate when people point out things that other people don't have the balls to talk about.
Okay.
Because they don't want to stand on, having an opinion.
Talking about is one thing,
but
when it comes to the opinion part of it, I'm always on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, right?
That's right. Like politics.
I often disagree with what he says, but I do like at times where people kind of turn the other cheek and don't say anything about stuff that Jason Whitlock does. I think it's important for people to speak up, even if you don't agree with it, man. If it's not hurting, you've always said this, and I've tried to take the same thing. Who is it hurting? When people always get butthurt about situations in life, right? You may like it, you may dislike it. I didn't like Kendrick or Lamar's halftime show. I didn't like what LeBron. Who's it hurting? It's not hurting anybody.
Exactly.
Right? I think it's important for people to be able to speak their mind in a way where it's not confrontational, just to hear a differing viewpoint, man. If you're not listening and learning from people that don't think the same as you, are you growing? I just saw an interview with CM Punk from WWE, and he's talking about, I like to put myself in situations where I'm scared because without the risk, you don't get the reward. Like, we all want to live life in the bubble now and only do things that are easy and convenient for us. But if you want to achieve something and you're at a certain stage in your life or you want to expand your knowledge or expand your growth, listen to a different podcast, listen to a different genre of music, eat some different food. You don't have to go out and change from an introvert to an extrovert. You're not at your age going to be able to go. You're not just going to start doing bungee jumping and skydiving. But if I'm like, Ian, try this food you never tried, or listen to this song, you're going to do it because it's not going to hurt you.
But I've never been a guy that's scared of that, though.
You know what I'm saying? But people are.
There's a lot of people
are scared of change. People are scared of doing things that they've never done before or taking that. I moved to Florida at 20 years old with three guys that I grew up with. 2 weeks later, they all moved back, and I stayed here. 20 years later, I haven't talked to any of those three guys in 20 years. It was terrifying not knowing anybody down here, but it was the greatest thing I ever did for my entire life. I can't even begin to think about what my life would be like if I didn't do that. So when we get into situations where we disagree and agree with people, kind of circling back to the RG3 Stephen A. Smith thing, I feel like so many times it goes back to the low-hanging fruit of like, yeah, well, he's a cornball brother anyway. And it's just like, what does that have to do with
What does that mean, first of all? I mean, a cornball brother, that's your opinion. That's just your opinion. Well, I mean, that's not a factual thing.
No, but Ian, we have to be real. Is he the only person that you've ever heard say that about a black man that is articulate and well-spoken and college educated?
You're talking to one.
All right.
Well, you're talking to one that had a white wife. And you're talking to one
who's say that to you?
I've been called that, yeah, absolutely.
And in my world, maybe a lot of other words, and maybe a lot of other worse words 100%,
too, right? But listen, this is me, right? In my world, I'm okay with your opinion, but I do think you're ignorant.
100%.
I have the right.
But don't you think that is a deeper discussion on that day? I know Robert Griffin III did not like that conversation.
Why would he?
Of course he wouldn't. Yeah. But what I'm saying is the fact that Rob Parker on national television a decade ago could actually go on the air. Like, just think about it. If he was white and said that, he would be excommunicated. He would not be allowed to talk about sports for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. But because he was black, he was able to. That just boggles my mind, and I feel so awful when I hear things like that. That you think that somebody is less than. You're the same race.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
There are people out there that think you're less than because of the color of your skin. This guy, you're on the same side in that aspect, and you're saying that that guy's a cornball because he's married to a white woman, because he's college educated.
Isn't he calling me a cornball too?
Everybody, if you fall into that category,
that's what I'm saying, though.
But isn't that, that's. I don't want to say it's more harmful than people that are outright racist and people that are outright not giving people opportunities because of the color of their skin, but it's, and again, not as egregious, but that's in the same. It may not be on the same block or in the same neighborhood, but it's in the same town. Like think about that. I don't want to ever put myself in a position where what I say on this microphone is going to hurt somebody, where it's going to affect them 13 years later. What did Robert Griffin III do to Rob Parker to deserve that he had to deal with that shit? Now, to this day, people, every single time you don't agree with Robert Griffin III, there's a contingent of people out there that say, oh, that's just a cornball brother, that's a Republican married to a white girl. Like, bro, that's not good. Words meant, you say, who did that hurt?
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of RG3, but bro, that hurt him.
But I also have to ask the question, but who does it help to? Okay,
does that help anybody?
It doesn't help anybody.
Oh.
And listen, to generalize, and racism is a word and a comment and a statement. It's just overused, okay? Listen, for Stephen A. Smith to say he's a cornball brother because he has...
Rob Parker.
Rob Parker to say because he has a white wife, that's a generalization. Okay? Because I'm not a cornball brother. I had a white wife. Okay? So it's a generalization because it's not true. It's not true. If you line up 100 black guys that married white women, which is probably more than not these days, you think how many are going to be cornballs, okay? And if they're cornballs in your world, maybe you live in an overly Afrocentric world. I don't live in that world.
But if you're a guy like Rob Parker who is educated himself, right? And you're a writer and a talk show host. Forever, you're the supporting actor. You're getting paid to talk about other people. You didn't play in the NBA. You didn't play in the NFL. You're making a living talking about other people. So to sit here and talk shit about somebody because of how they are, that's personal. That has nothing. You're telling me you can't do your job without talking about RG3 like that? That's asinine. There's just no way. So, words do matter. Words do hold a lot of weight. And RG3, still, you're bringing it up with Stephen A. 13 years later. We may not think it's a big deal, and people say, well, it wouldn't bother me. It's not about you. Something happened last night in the game, after the game, where one of the players said something to one of the reporters, and it affected him in a way where you have to really be conscientious of how words affect people. Because in the world we live in now with mental health and what people go through, not saying you have to tiptoe around the tulips and not, you can't be overly concerned with how your words and actions affect people's feelings. But if you have an ability to do the right thing and treat people the right way instead of being a dick, right? Like I really think one of the worst things people do is hide behind honesty when it comes to being rude. Well, I'm just being honest.
I agree.
If you see an overweight person walking across the street and you go, damn, you're fat. And somebody goes, well, he's just being honest. Nah, bro. No, you're not being honest. You're a dick.
Stop being
don't
a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
And I feel that people hide behind that veil of honesty way too much in this world when you should just be a good person. It shouldn't be that freaking hard.
It shouldn't be. It is for a lot of people. I hear a lot of people, a lot of different situations getting personal. It happens all the damn time. I heard somebody say the other day, and I don't remember where it was, but it was somewhere on Instagram but I don't know if it was a scout or somebody involved with football. They said, we like to look at the quarterback's girlfriend because if she's an ugly girl, he's not something. And I'm thinking,
was it a joke?
I don't think it was.
Oh, no, because that's from Moneyball, the movie.
Yeah, but no, this guy was being serious.
Oh, okay. Because that's from Moneyball.
I never saw Moneyball.
So they said if the guy has a ugly girlfriend, he's got low confidence.
Well, you know what? It might have been a clip from Moneyball, but that had to come from somewhere. That's to come from somewhere. So think about that mentality. What if that's a beautiful person? You know what I'm saying? So you want to get that blonde bimbo looks like Barbie? Good for you. What if that person who may be a 7, 7.5, 6, whatever it is, okay? You're going to say he's not the right person because she's not a dime piece? That's gross to me. I think that's gross. And if that's your indicator, I don't think you should be in that position. I really don't.
Well, you also don't want to be around people like that.
That's the thing. And you're saying about being nice, Jay, I'm this real. Sometimes people you're just being an asshole. And nobody likes you when you talk that way. So why would you talk that way? You're allowed to. You're not breaking any rules. But everybody thinks you're an asshole. So why would you want everybody to think you're an asshole? I don't understand that part of it.
We live in a world where it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Okay.
It's all about relationships. It's all about communication and connections. If you're an asshole, you know what you do?
Yeah.
You're just cutting off each one of those connections.
Correct.
Left and right. And because let's say somebody wants to go into business with me. And if I'm an asshole and somebody goes, Ian, I want to do business with Jay, you can't, in your right mind, put your name on that recommendation.
No way.
Can't.
No
because
way.
you know what happens? You put that in motion. I go into business with this guy and it doesn't work out. You look like the bad guy. Whether you were trying to do the right thing or not. But that's why you have to be concerned with who you surround yourself with. So I feel like we have conversations like this. These are the conversations that people should be having.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
People should be having, a black man from Canada and a white guy from Long Island. One thing that you and I have always done is we never shy away from the tough conversations because for the majority of the time, people cannot have these discussions. Either they're not different enough, they're not alike enough, they're not comfortable enough. So I don't think these are the worst conversations to have.
The best.
They are the best because I think that's where you get. That's why, again, I like when Stephen A. Smith goes on Sean Hannity or when Stephen A. Smith has Ben Shapiro on.
So do I.
That's great stuff, man. You need that. We need people to be able to find common ground because, we have a lot more alike than we do separate. But is that something that you want to hear on a sports show? I don't necessarily, let's say this. If it's on the Stephen A. Smith's podcast, fair game. But if I'm tuning into First Take on ESPN, do I necessarily want to hear that? Maybe not.
No, and listen,
time and place.
Sure, there's a time and place for everything, but I watch a lot of videos. I watch videos and listen to successful people.
Yeah, you send them all to me.
And why I want to know why they're successful, okay? And what brings people to a certain level, and you have it, Jay, I hope that I have it. I think I can give you some examples that prove I have it. To be liked is one thing, and to be intelligent is one thing. But you have to have emotional intelligence. That's something that I've read about. Emotional intelligence is when you walk in a room and how people react to you, okay? That's, if you own a business and you walk in the room and the air comes out of the business, you will fail, okay? You have to be that guy when you walk in the room, people feel good about themselves. Those are the guys that succeed. Those are the guys that you want to be around them. And there's too many people, I think Elon Musk has zero emotional intelligence. And I think that scares me. I don't think Donald Trump has any emotional intelligence. I didn't say they weren't intelligent.
Whoa, wonderful.
They don't have any emotional intelligence. And that's who's running our world, and that's who our kids are looking at. So our kids are going to emulate Elon Musk, and you might like him, and that's fine. This is America. But I certainly do not want my kid. If my kids act like Elon Musk, I'm going upside their head. I don't want that, okay? So you can like him, that's fine, but my kids, I don't want them acting like that, any of them, at any time. So just know, being intelligent, one thing, when you walk in a room and you're an asshole, once you leave, everybody's talking about you and they don't want to work with you. That's fact.
I think if you're using those people to show your kids an example of how to act, I think you're losing anyway. You
have no chance. You have no choice. It's right in front of everybody every damn day. Every day I go to Instagram and I see a bunch of Elon Musk stuff.
You know what you do? Scroll up.
Yeah, but the kids are not scrolling up. They're watching it.
Oh, well, if you're a parent, same thing as having a musician or a athlete. If those are the people that your kids are aspiring to be, those are their role models, then what are you doing as a parent? At the end of the day, you're not spending enough time with your kids. Take the fucking phone out of their hands.
But listen, Charles Barkley said it. I'm not a role model, but he's wrong. He is a role model. I don't care what anybody says.
I think there's a difference between being being a role model and being influential. Those are two different things.
I'm okay with that.
So if you're influential, you influence these kids at the end of the day. I'll tell you this plain as day. I was influenced by Mark Messier. I was influenced by by Derek Jeter. My role model was my dad. My role model was the guy that worked 4 jobs to keep a roof over our heads and keep food on our table.
But you had somebody.
A
lot of guys don't have.
No, but
they don't have them.
There's more people than not do. More people than not do. It's just a statistical fact, right? But when you don't, it doesn't necessarily have to be a man. It could be a woman. There's nothing wrong with that. It could be your mom. There's a lot of guys that grew up in single-parent household where their mom was their everything. Right? Look at LeBron. LeBron's the perfect example. LeBron grew up, his mom was his role model. And look at what he's doing. Regardless of how you feel about him, he's a freaking awesome father and an amazing husband. Look at what he's been able to do. Whether you're an MJ, a LeBron guy, that doesn't matter. But where you grew up, that's where your role models are. If we have so many people that are looking at musicians and all, we're talking about politicians as role models, honestly. Like, were people growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, like, was Bill Clinton a role model? Maybe after they found out what happened with Monica Lewinsky, maybe some adults thought he was.
Kinda.
But adults, but I mean, you know what I mean? Nobody was like, wow, really like that freaking, the governor of Arkansas, man, that was my guy. Like, maybe if you had an aspiration to be a politician.
But you know how human beings are.
But it's an influence, not a role model.
But you know how human beings are, okay? If Charles Barkley gets a DUI, a bunch of people will be disappointed, and they don't know him, okay? So role model, maybe not, that's not the right title, okay? But you're disappointing people if you mess up, okay? So that's a power that a lot of people don't have. So you have to know that, okay? To say I'm not a role model, great, but you're disappointing a lot of people when you go around acting an ass. Like, when I hear people not signing autographs and being assholes to people out in public, I don't get it. Because I live in the same city. I've been in the same city since 1990. And if there's a story like that of me, there's a story behind it because I don't get it.
Yeah, but like a guy that you and I really like is Warren. Warren Sapp is like that.
And I don't approve it. Warren Sapp has changed. I've been with Warren Sapp, and I could tell you what he is. I mean, he's a guy.
But there are some horror stories out there from people that have told me
is.
about things, and I'm like,
of course,
what do we say? But that's, again,
I've been with Warren, and I said to him,
that's the difference between influence and role model, and also the difference between, we judge things in life, whether it's people, whether it's like businesses, whether it's politics, everything is about your perspective. As much as bro, you don't even share the same exact perspective as your wife or your twin brother or your sister. That's singular. I can tell you, regardless of the experience that friends of mine have had about Warren Sapp, you know what Warren Sapp has been to me every single time? Amazing. Yeah. He's treated me like gold. Yeah. Whether it was at that golf tournament for the Ritchie Foundation, whether we were hanging out at BKFC. So all that shit that you see is not great. Do I approve of it? No. Would I want somebody to like think that I was like that? No. But I can only judge. People say like only God can judge. Judge everything every day. That's where your opinions are based.
Have you ever asked him for anything?
I don't think so.
That's what I'm saying. Most of these
just around him.
But most of these people who have horror stories projected himself in his world.
Right.
And I've been with Warren before when I went, I'm not about that, dog, and I left. Like I've seen him do stuff that I was 100% against. 100. Told him that, okay? So I'm not defending Warren in a lot of things. But as a friend,
right,
top 5 loyal. Like, I mean, he's as loyal as they come.
He is.
And whether you know it or not, somebody with that mentality is the glue of your locker room. That's why if you think your leader is a nice guy, your leader, Hardy Nickerson, Brian Cox,
Tom
Brady. Well, you ever hear Tom Brady speak? Looks like he wants to fight somebody all the time. He's not a fighter, but that's his mentality, though. Like, you got to have a little of that to lead something and for it to be great. You have to have a little of that. And some people don't have any, unfortunately.
Got that right. Man, that was a good conversation.
No
That's
doubt.
I think some of our best conversations come where we kind of start somewhere and we got to navigate down the road. And that's the kind of shit that you're going to get with us.
The cafe brings it out of you.
The cafe brings that. No, I just think it's me and you, the way it is.
Is that what it is?
I mean, yeah, it's
It's all
exactly
that
what it is.
smoke you
Well,
blowing around.
no, but you know how it is, though, right? There's certain people that you have in your life, and certain people that come by, and I hear it when I'm here with guys that you play ball with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you may have in-depth conversations that go to a line or go over a line, or you come from different backgrounds based on your relationship with people.
Correct.
You know, like my good buddy Nelly. Shout out to Nelly. Sometimes we'll have conversations that are deep.
Deep.
You don't plan it like that, but it just happens. And I think that's why you and I have always worked as friends and as, whenever we were hosting together, is because I honestly don't think that there's anybody in the Tampa Bay area, whether it's sports or not, but especially in the sports realm, nobody's having conversations like, buddy, just depth, not being afraid. Like, I really don't, I have no inhibition. I have nothing that's going to hold me back from saying what I have to say about race, about sexuality, about anything. You know why? Because like, this is my truth. This is what I only speak from what I know, and what I don't know, I have no problem in saying I don't.
Right.
I have no problem in deferring. I'm never going to sit there and act like I know something that I don't. But I like having uncomfortable conversations. I like being able to talk about things that nobody else has the balls to talk about.
Well, I've been on the air. I was on the air with Ron for almost 20 years, and we shied away from uncomfortable situations because I know for a fact that you and I are closer than we are apart. Okay,
Right, for sure.
Our mentalities are very similar. Me and Ron had different mentalities, and I think we knew, like Ron's an alpha, and I think whatever alpha means, I would probably be somewhere in that category. But I knew I had to concede to Ron. I knew that because it was a Ron and Ian show.
Right.
I was second bill. So part of the relationship was to step back a little bit. When you came aboard, I was able to talk about anything comfortably. There was times when me and Ron would get into it and it would be uncomfortable afterwards, and I don't think I ever felt that with you. And once again, I think it helps when you hang out with somebody outside because I bust balls, man. And if I'm not busting your balls, I don't like you. Okay, so
But I think the best conversations we have aren't like, we have fun and we laugh.
Yeah.
Like you and your JTS, the video, this still comes up all the time. When I said that you were going to set the record for JTS sacks. But I think some of the best talks that we've had are like some of the serious shit we talk about.
Of course.
Like,
but
and
very
I
few people talk race.
No, but I'm not even just talking about race or politics or anything like that. I'm talking about like when Vincent Jackson passed away, right?
That was tough.
Like, we spoke about that for a while. Derek Brooks reached out to you after that, remember, and said, like, you guys did a really good job of talking about it.
That was tough.
It was not easy.
That was tough.
You and I hosted together the day we found out the big dog. Like,
Yeah.
Ron wasn't there that day.
Yeah.
Ian and I were hosting together, and literally 3 minutes before we went on air, we found out that, a guy that's on the Mount Rushmore of WDAE, Steve Dewey, passed away. Ripped up the paperwork for everything we did, and we just turned it into a memorial show, and we had so many different people call in. And I think that adaptability, that resourcefulness, is not common. And I'm not tooting our own horns here, but I think that's one of those things where every time we crack a mic together, I think it's going to be good stuff.
Well, I mean, when I write my book, probably never will, but when I do, one of the chapters might be me looking at you and you looking at your phone and you looked at me, and I knew something was wrong right away, and that's when Vincent Jackson news. And then we had to do live radio immediately. And I think a month before that, Vincent was sitting in the Dignitary Cafe. We were watching football. All the fellas were on the other side. He was over here with all the ladies. When he left, every woman in that room was gaga over him.
Yeah.
They go, he's the nicest guy. He shouldn't have looked like that, first of all. He shouldn't have looked like that. It was too easy for him. Mm-hmm. Women loved him. Okay? He was 6'5", 215, 5% body fat, whatever. Real smooth. But was just a nice dude. And when after it all happened and you hear what happened and the way it happened, and then you hear some particulars about what had been going on, it really opened my eyes to really asking my brothers, are you okay? I swear to God, I asked Tony, you good? Ty J, you good? Anybody, Mark Royals, you good? And like, we don't lie to each other.
No,
you see what I'm saying? Like when you ask somebody you're good, it's different because like I'm asking from a different.
'Cause you really care.
No, it's not just that. It's a different angle.
Yeah.
Like so when Tony talks about his shoulders, to me, he can look me in my eyes knowing I understand what he says.
Right,
you know what I mean? When I wake up in my back this morning, my back feeling the way it is, like when I hear other people complaining about stuff, I almost wonder what that feels like. Like, I don't know what a normal pain feels like. A normal pain hasn't happened since I was 6 before I played football. So, but listen, doing this podcast is fun, and I get to get it out. And if I never get back on radio, it won't be the end because I'm going to find a microphone, and let's do this, man.
Check out microphone. Check out
Right.
Ian_Beckles on Instagram, at Recher on all of our social media platforms. Again, every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Make sure you come check us out here at the Dignitary Cafe, 4817 Southwest Shore Boulevard. Go get you some kava. Go get you some kratom.
Yeah, man.
Got a lot of things going on. Big concert coming up Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday we have a Space Camp.
Space Camp.
Beautiful. They have like psychedelic weed type music. They're reggae. They're real cool. They've been here a couple times. Real cool cats. Real different music. Space Camp with a K.
Yeah, karaoke. They got cigars here.
Man.
A lot of great stuff here. Some the little shop that you have out here.
Yeah. We got a little smoke shop.
Man.
You know how we do.
But everything here.
Yeah.
Again, 4817 Southwest Shore Boulevard, Dignitary Cafe. Ian Beckles, I'm Jay Recher. We'll see you next Wednesday at 3 o'clock.